This is why governments fear there being anything that goes against their narrative. We don't want the truth surfacing. We don't want those tools to tell you what's actually going on, unless you really dig for it. But even when you dig for it, they're gonna give you already a pre-narrative. They're already giving you an ideology on which you should basically piggyback off of. That's the problem. If you train a model to say, hey, 1 + 2 = 5, how do you expect that model to reason moving forward? What's up, guys? This is God, Grit, and Glory, and I am your host, Veto Creed. We talk about the stuff that most people stay quiet about: Jesus, business, politics, and occasionally a few conspiracy theories. No scripts, no filters, just straight up truth. So join us as we unravel and speak truth. Welcome, guys. This is Veto Creed with God, Grit, and Glory, and we have another episode for you today. I had an interesting morning this morning. I opened up Proverbs, just like I always read open up Proverbs. And I had a reading, and I thought it was very interesting because I've dealt with some problems. So my kid's been a little bit out of line. I've been forced to give him some light spanks on the butt periodically. I do that. I have to. Our faith teaches to do so. It is important for us to understand the fact that you don't abuse your kids. If you are angry, if you are pissed off, that is not a time to discipline your kids. The time you discipline your kids is quite literally when they are acting out, when they are going against what they're supposed to be doing, and you do it out of literally discipline, out of structure, out of need, because it's an important part of the training process. So I read a verse this morning out of Proverbs 23, verse 13. It says, "Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with the rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with the rod and deliver his soul from hell." You know, we live in a culture where even doing light spanks, on the butt is frowned upon. Everybody says, oh, that's abuse. Of course, culture would teach that. Of course, culture would say anything that promotes violence is essentially bad. It is horrific. We want to allow it. We won't allow it. This is ridiculous. And so I will tell you that our culture does this intentionally, because guess what happens when we don't discipline our kids? They become chaotic. They become unruly. They essentially then move out into the system, and then the system has to discipline them. And I'm talking about the system as in the government system, society, everything else in place. And this is why you have boys. And let me tell you something that's very interesting. Specifically, my boys don't listen to my wife very well. I mean, they do, but they're always testing her. They're always seeing what they can get away with. And what's interesting is when I'm around, they won't ever do anything bad. As soon as I leave, that's when all hell breaks loose. And that's why there's a saying, I'm going to put the fear of God in you. Because the thing is one thing I do like about, the black culture specifically, or, the moms, they will beat the hell out of you. Like literally and physically beat the hell out of you. Because this is what they do. They don't want their kids growing up like this. But I will tell you, despite what maybe a black woman could do to their son, it is by far nothing close to what a man can do to his son, and to make sure that he understands. Not only that, when I discipline my kids, I don't just discipline them. I actually then explain to them why I'm disciplining them. I explain to them why they're being disciplined. I say, hey, do you understand what you did wrong? I don't just get angry and go and start smacking him around, and I don't ever physically hit him in the face or use anything, other than my, maybe a belt. Old school training. But let me tell you something. I always explain to them what's going on. I try to sit them down, and I usually give them at least a dozen chances before they get the kind of discipline that requires you to rule more with a rod. And the thing is, gentle parenting is what infiltrated our society right now. We live in a culture of gentle parenting. We live in a culture of indoctrination and in a culture where they want kids to express themselves. Oh, I have feelings. I want to express these feelings. I want to tell you about my feelings. Oh, how do you feel today? Do you feel gay today? Do you feel like you're a woman? Do you feel like you're a girl? And this is the kind of crap that needs to be beat out of our children. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. Parents, you are enabling this trash. I mean, the topic of our subject today is not going to be about parenting, but I thought I would note this because I have a lot of listeners that are either dads or going to be dads and stuff like this. And they're very, they're worried the fact that, they're going to ruin their kids if they discipline them. They're worried that their kids are going to hate them. They fear the fact that their kids are going to actually hate them more than their kids are going to be out of line and ruin society. That should bother you. I don't care personally if my kids hate me per se. But the truth is they will never hate you. They're going to respect you even more. It may come with time. But let me tell you something. I'd rather be feared than quote unquote loved in a way where they think I'm weak. I'd rather be feared in my own household. I'd rather have my kids fear me and they fear the wrath that comes from the dad. This is what society lacks, specifically in the Black community, because they grew up with no dads. It's a staggering statistic. Over 76% of African-American Black kids are grown up in our current society without fathers, without dads, or absent dads. Dads that are here, but they're gone. Then they come back, then they're gone. And that's a problem. Because if you look at the crime rate, and of course, they're probably too busy out there committing crime because they say, less than 4%. I mean, three and some change percent of our entire United States is Black men. And that could be children from ages of 14 to essentially 60. These men are the ones that commit the most crimes. So of course, they're not going to be around for their children. And that's 60%. 60% of these 14 to 60-year-olds are out committing crimes. Why would they ever be around for their kids when they're either in jail or they're out committing crimes? They're too busy doing something else stupid. But I bring this up because this is important, and a lot of people don't want to talk about this. These are the topics, and this is why I talk about these subjects here, because these conversations are unfiltered and they need to be said. And I think enough people need to try to get through all of the noise and all of the how should I put it? Self-guilt. White people in our culture have this self-guilt that has never existed in the existence of man. A lot of white people feel bad about being white. And this is the power of propaganda. If somebody tells you you're white, you're the problem, and you're like, yeah, no, I understand, I'm sorry. I'd be like, what? I'm the problem? You're the problem. You're the victim. Victims are the problem, by the way. We live in a world where victimhood is the problem. And who do you know that are some of the biggest victims on this planet? I mean, we're actually trying to weave in here a little bit because the topic of our conversation today is going to be literally victimhood. And I essentially started with that subject about my boy because I want to explain to you that we live in a culture of victims right now. And our children are going to eventually turn into these victims if we don't discipline them, if they don't become strong. And the way they become strong is if they get all of the foolishness out of their brain. And the way they get the foolishness out of their brain is oftentimes you have to beat it out of them, but you definitely have to at least discipline it out of them. Because this foolishness is what essentially then opens up all of their minds and guardrails to stupidity. When a person has absolutely no logic and nothing in his brain is coherent, everything that he absorbs is going to be incoherent. Because the foundation that he's on, the structural foundation and reason off of what he reasons, it's like, let me give you a good example. If an AI model, if you train an AI, I use a lot of these references because I deal in LLMs and training models and infrastructures and architectural stuff in the AI space. I build a lot of websites. That's kind of my background and what I do for a living. Let me tell you something. When you train a model on pure and utter nonsensical trash, or we'll say stuff that makes absolutely no sense. If you train a model to say, hey, 1 + 2 = 5, and you give it a bunch of inputs that are not, in fact, true, how do you expect that model to reason moving forward? This is why governments fear there being anything that goes against their narrative. This is why they say that there's not enough guardrails. They say it in the name of cybersecurity, but we know what they're really saying. We don't want the truth surfacing. We don't want, God forbid, Grok or OpenAI or recently Claude and Fable 5 to come out and actually start spitting the truth. We don't want those tools to tell you what's actually going on, unless you really dig for it. But even when you dig for it, they're going to give you already a pre-narrative. They're going to say, well, this is why it's like this. Or they say, oh, are you talking about the conspiracy theory? They're already giving you an ideology on which you should basically piggyback off of. That's the problem. And this is the book that I bought recently. It's called The Day Amazon Murdered Free Speech. It's a very interesting book. It talks about the war in Ukraine and, some of the crap going on there, and it sort of ties in everything. But let me tell you something, what I'm going to talk about primarily on this episode, we're talking about fake anti-Semitism. The FBI and the Justice Department are investigating a new series of bomb threats directed against Jewish community centers across the country. The GCC's report, which is a Jewish, obviously, publisher, reported 11 bomb threats on Monday alone. That brings the total number to 69 threats in 27 states in just under 6 weeks. Most of them falling on just 4 dates. Fortunately, though, no bombs have been found so far. That wave of anti-Jewish activities culminated on February 20th in acts of vandalism against Jewish cemeteries in St. Louis, or so the media reported here in the words of CNN. Also on Monday, look at this. More than 100 headstones were found vandalized at the Jewish cemetery in Missouri. It's not clear yet if there is any linking to the bomb threats, though. This happened in 2017. This happened in the wake of, they're always setting up for this. But let me tell you what's interesting. And as I'm doing a podcast, I was interrupted by the mailman, and we're going to do the unveiling of what the mailman brought. I spoke in my previous podcast that I purchased a great amount of books. And it makes sense. And it's totally relevant because we're talking about how Amazon killed books. This is one of my favorite books that I bought. This is, at the end of the day, this is the most important book of them all. It's called the Holy Bible. Ooh, wow. This smells prehistoric. And to give you guys an understanding, this book is extremely old. And there's actually real registries here. Emma Stella, Hubert Luxmore, Henry James, Sybil Louise, dating back to 1876. This is actually incredible. This is the Family Devotional Bible. The Family Devotional Bible, published by John Tallis and Company to the Christian world. That's an amazing book. Just amazing. That's a piece of history. That's a piece of art. By the way, some of these books are not just books. I'm a big collector, so I love to collect books. And books is power. And by the way, just so you guys understand and remember, the one thing that Hitler used to burn was he burned books. He had a massive book burning session. And the Jews, they also understand the importance of books. This is why this is why we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about next on why Amazon killed free speech. That is probably more interesting than all of it combined. And then this book by Roger Garardi, the founding myths of modern Israel. This is going to be an interesting read as well. Defined French censors' founding myths broke the silence and shattered the taboos on the Holocaust, on Adolf Hitler's relations with the founders of modern Israel, and on Zionism's hidden influence on American politics. And by the way, people, if you have an opportunity to buy books, buy them. Do not rely on these stupid Kindles. My wife's account, we deleted, and little did we realize the fact that some of the books, she didn't have a lot, she had a handful. They were all attached to her Kindle, so she lost access to them. And when we reached out and said, hey, can we download those books? You know what they said? No. Are they transferable to another account? You know what they said? No. And then I bought this book. I'm not exactly sure on what position it takes, but my guess is it's probably not a good position. But I want to see the opposing side because the back says oneforisrael.org. So I'm assuming that this is a pro-Israel book, but I want to find what some of their arguments are and then debunk them. So when you're trying to argue a position, you don't want to just take books that are going to be only in your favor. You want to actually use books that could potentially challenge your opinions and your narratives to see if the thing is if your narrative will stand and hold water. There's one book in here that I really wanted that was very hard to get. It's a collector's item that you guys will probably be very familiar with, and I think I'm opening it as we speak. Yep, this is it. Called Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. Annotated translation. And I got a couple of little articles in here too. Washington, D.C., December 7th. Following its second series of instruction issued by Office of Civilian Defense for guidance of the people, in some cases, air raids. The safest place in an air raid is at home. If you are away from home, get under cover in the nearest shelter. Avoid crowded spaces. Stay off the streets. The enemy wants you to run out into the streets, create a mob, start a panic. Don't do it. If incendiary bombs fall, play a spray from a garden hose. Never a splash or stream of water on the bomb. Switch to a stream to put out any fire started by the bomb. Switch back to a spray for the bomb. The bomb will burn for about 15 minutes. If left alone, only about 2 minutes under a fine water spray, a jet splash stream or a bucket of water will make it explode. Wow, this is actually pretty cool. If you have a soda and acid extinguisher, the kind you turn upside down, use it with your finger over the nozzle to make a spray. Don't use the chemical small cylinder of liquid on the bombs. It is all right for ordinary fire. Should gas be used, go at once to the most inside room in the house, fewest doors and windows, paste paper over glass, stuff rags in window cracks and under doors, But above all, keep cool and stay home. Choose one member of the family to be the home air raid warden who will remember all the rules and what to do. Mother knows best. This is wild. When was this published? I'm gonna actually find out which year this was published. And just like that, this is a really priceless piece of Americana. This is an article that was published December 1941, immediately after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Here are the clues. The headline, Air Raid Rules, begins Washington, December 9th, AP. Following the second in a series of instruction issued by Office of Civilian Defense. Another article discusses citizens volunteering for the military and the states. During the first 2 days of war, the United States entered World War II on December 8th, 1941, following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. This is cool. I got to admit, that's cool. I'm going to have to frame that. So we will talk about this Mein Kampf because it's an interesting book. It's what they don't want you guys to have access to. Of course, they would never allow this to be sold on Amazon. We obviously know why, because of all of the propaganda that they've been shilling. This is a very interesting one and also a very difficult one to find. The Hitler's secret book, the long hidden papers of Hitler's confidential aims for the world conquest. And this was published in 1945 to give you guys an understanding on how old this book is. This original book was published in 1945. So, interesting. The Journal of Historical Review. This is specifically about the Holocaust. These are the Holocaust Review and all of these things. This should be a fun read. The Journal of Historical Review. Hitler's secret book. Dissecting the Holocaust. It's actually a really thick one. There's a lot of evidentiary proof. This talks about the gas chambers. This is a very, 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 very deep dive on gas chambers. There is a lot of evidence in this book, and this is one of the main books that was actually banned off of the internet, specifically about from the Holocaust. So the book that I'm reading right now, which is by Germar Rudolph, The Day Amazon Murdered Free Speech. This is the same publisher. He just was a lot younger here. And he was actually the one that published this. And this was published in 1994. Very interesting book. And last but not least, this one seems kind of heavy. I think this might be the one I've been waiting for pretty anxiously, even more so than all of these Nazi books. Oh, that's why they put two in here. And this is what I was looking for. The Holocaust Encyclopedia, uncensored and unconstrained. This literally tells you about everything from the Auschwitz main camps. It documents everything. It goes through all of these people. It talks about who they were. It shows the layouts of the concentration camps. It talks about all of these individual people. Oswald Pohl in Nuremberg, 1947, with scabbed fresh wounds all over his left cheek from torture. There's a lot of artwork here for Nazi propaganda that they were trying to push through. Powerful book, by the way. This kind of book may be extremely illegal, my guess, in the coming years, because they don't want you to know about this. This is actually the truth about how many Jews there were and where they escaped to. It's going to be very hard to go through all this, but must have ordered all these from the same place because all 4 books showed up from the same area. The Dissolution of the Eastern European Jewry. That's going to be interesting. Drama of the European Jews by Professor Paul Razanier. Should also be interesting. Bungled, Denying the Holocaust by Germar Rudolph. I bought a lot of his books. He's very thorough. I do like him because I had a conversation with somebody this weekend about, we'll say, the quote-unquote Holocaust. And I'm going to tell you something what's interesting about having this conversation with this person. He's like, did you fact check everything that you're reading? I'm like, where are you going to fact check it? Are you guys insane? The funny part to me is the fact that people genuinely believe that you can fact check these books. You cannot fact check them because there's nothing to fact check them against in theory. And then say, well, why would you believe them? I'm sure there's a lot of artifacts. I'm sure there's a lot of evidence. But a lot of that evidence will full-blown be denied because guess who's trying to bury it? The deep state, the narrative. All of these Jews are trying to bury this information. They don't want you to know this. So we were sort of interrupted. And I was talking about fake anti-Semitism. And I'm going somewhere with this. This is actually the buildup here. So all of a sudden, all of these outbreaks in 2017 of bomb threats and cemeteries being vandalized. Over 100 tombstones were overturned, damaging Jewish cemeteries in Philadelphia. And then all of a sudden, this is actually the funnest part. I love this. Self-convicting here. Israeli police have arrested a 19-year-old Jewish man in connection with a string of bomb threats against Jewish community centers across the U.S. There have been more than 150 bomb threats against Jewish community centers and day schools in 37 states and 2 Canadian provinces since January 9th. Israeli police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld described the suspect as a hacker, but said his motives were unclear. Rosenfeld said the threats were accompanied by acts of vandalism on several Jewish communities and Jewish cemeteries. A month later, the Israeli media reported that the young man who was arrested for making the bomb threats, identified as 18-year-old Michael Ron David Kadar, had actually made them on request. He even advertised his services online for $30 per threat when his case went to trial in Israel. It happened in America, but his trial went to trial in Israel. In August of 2017, NBC News revealed that Kadar has been connected to threats, hoaxes, and extortion attempts to more than 2,000 Jewish community centers, schools, airlines, police station, and other institutions spanning more than 2 years. The whole affair, therefore, was a scam. Who remembers, by the way, this is in their guidebook, their textbook. And what do I mean by that? The Jews have a guidebook on how to do things. The exploding mics and the pagers, that's their guidebook. The hoaxes, just like they did with Smollett. You guys remember Juicy or Justin? He goes by Jesse Smollett. In 2019, he fell victim to racist and homophobic attacks. And then in February, when he started going to trial, Investigators concluded the attacks had been staged and alleged that Smollett had paid two acquaintances to carry it out before filing a false police reports. He was convicted on 5 felony counts related to falsifying a police report. The Illinois Supreme Court overturned his conviction on procedural grounds, ruling the prosecutors should have brought a second prosecution after an earlier agreement to dismiss the original charges. The court did not rule on whether the underlying events occurred as Smollett claimed. Are you following? He committed a crime, fake reports. They challenged it. In the time that it was hot topic, 2021, he got prosecuted. Did he do jail time? No. It was in appeals court for 3 years. And then what ended up happening is it got overturned. The Illinois Supreme Court overturned his conviction on procedural grounds and threw it out and dismissed all charges. This should really bother people. And if it doesn't, then clearly you're retarded. or you have a dead soul. So mass murdering history, right? So this whole affair was a scam. The question remained unanswered. Who gave the Israeli the orders for the 2,000 threats and spent over $60,000 on them? One may assume that the Jewish community centers and the schools had nothing to do with it, but rather an overarching organization that had an interest in triggering hysteria. For now, we only can speculate about this. This entire affair feeds my suspicion that someone out there thinks that if there aren't any anti-Semitic acts in the world, they need to invent some, as they evidently serve a very important purpose: the victim mentality, the victim agenda. That is exactly the purpose that they serve. And you know what they do with that purpose? Well, I'll get into that. Following this event, because the first workday of the week follows the false New York cemetery story on March 6th, Castle Hill Publishers, the world's largest scientific publishing house, focused on critical archive-based research on the so-called Holocaust, received the following email from Amazon ebook subsidiary, Amazon KDP. Hello, we're contacting you regarding the following book. During our review process, we found that this content is in violation of our content guidelines. As a result, we cannot offer this book for sale. If we identify additional submissions with similar content that violates our guidelines, you may lose access to the optional KDP services and or face account level actions up and including termination. To learn more about our content guidelines, blah, 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 please visit us at kindledirectpublishing.com. Best regards, Amazon.com. What does this mean? This means that they used these series of events to then push their propaganda, to then push their Holocaust denying stuff and say, well, this is the reason why all this is happening. And there's a whole list of books here. They literally banned over 36 books. Dissecting the Holocaust. Interesting. Look at that. This book right here, Dissecting the Holocaust, was one of the first books that was banned off of Amazon. And then you get into a bunch of other ones, and a lot of these have German titles. The Lucha Reports, which I did order as well. Breaking the Spell, Debating the Holocaust. Auschwitz, the first gassing. Lecturing on the Holocaust and so forth. Until March 6th, 2017, any of these books could be purchased from Amazon under ID given. But ever since, when pulling up these pages, you only get to see some apologetic pooch as shown above. If you want to test it yourself, go and check it out. After 72 books had been killed, next on the censored list were equivalent print books. When checking the US and UK Amazon websites for them, the result was just as devastating. The next table shows 68 books, some of them abbreviated, which could be purchased at least from Amazon's US sales page until March 6th. But ever since, all you could see is one more only apologetic pooch. An apologetic pooch means that there's basically a little doggy that says, sorry, we couldn't find this page. The Hoax of the 20th Century, 2015. Auschwitz, a judge looks at the evidence, 2015. Der Holocaust. And by the way, I'm going to make it my personal mission to try to get my hands on every single one of these books, because money's not an issue. I can afford all these. And we'll see if I can actually create the biggest collection of Holocaust books on the planet. I want to see if I can own all of them. In addition, if you search Amazon for best-selling revisionist authors such as Dr. Arthur Butz, professor of electrical engineering at Northwest University, here is what you find. His bestseller, Hoax of the 20th Century, first published in 1976, used to be available in its original as well as numerous revised and explained later editions, new and used. See the illustration at the top of the next page. But when you go to Amazon, it is as if the book had never existed. Booth's name on Amazon, this merely yielded 3-old issue of the long defunct Journal of Historical Review, 2 of which weren't even available. Over 300 books got banned. And then they got replaced with indoctrinating books that counter these books. As long as they're pro something, they're fine. You can't be against something because they become racist. This is why we know about public book burning ceremony in Nazi Germany that happened in 1933 on May 11th by German students in Berlin. Today, Jews are their worthy heirs, is what's said in a picture. And then the Jewish news comes out online and they start raving about it. They start saying, Amazon removes Holocaust denial books from sale. But what caused them to do this, by the way? Did we talk about that? Yes. It was all of these events that led up to it. It was all of these events that happened. Let's read about this. Shortly after the world media started spreading the news of Israel government-sponsored Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Center, referring specifically of these anti-Semitic attacks in the United States, started putting Amazon under pressure to remove any and all material that questioned Holocaust narrative, claiming that it spreads anti-Jewish hatred and thus fuels these recent attacks, like knocking over headstones. Like, really? Really, guys? This is the most absurd thing on the planet. They think that knocking over headstones is an act of violence, claiming that spreading anti-Jewish hatred and thus fuels these recent attacks. Never mind that the Jews as such, let alone their religion, aren't even a topic in targeted books. What's interesting is they're not even targeting Jews in any of these books. All they're talking about is the potential that the Holocaust never happened. They're not saying that Jews are horrible people. It's the Jews that are coming out and actually making themselves the target. Riding the wave of outrage about these anti-Jewish attacks, Yad Vashem's efforts were spread far and wide through the mass media. As a Google search with the terms Yad Vashem Amazon denial books shows, I show on the next page a few media items, but rest assured, this is only a tiny fraction of the news coverage that they received. Amazon should stop selling Holocaust denial books. You can read in the journal, the Jerusalem Post. That's dated February 23rd, 2017. By Tamara Ziev. Of course, she's Jewish. Some media reaction of Israel Holocaust Memorial Center Yad Vashem demanding that Amazon stop selling historical research. which radically redefines its reason to exist. Amazon gets heat over Holocaust denial written by the HuffPost. I mean, HuffPost isn't as popular anymore, sort of died out. Amazon is coming under fire in Europe and peddling books that claim the Holocaust never happened amid resurgence of anti-Semitic and other hate speech. Holocaust denial is a crime in France, Italy, and Germany with penalties that can include prison. Amazon removed several books from its website in those countries following an investigation by the London Sunday Times that found dozens of books denying the Holocaust for sale. Most of the books are self-published. So they don't even have publishers. They're going out and spreading this, and they're not letting them do that. And then you have Yad Vashem pushes Amazon to yank Holocaust denying books. Did 6 million really die? It's actually a Jewish book that I bought as well. And in spite of what they want to make you believe, revisionism is neither above love nor hate. It's about accuracy. Well put. Well put, Rudolph. It's not about love or hate. When you question history, you are essentially attacking history. You are attacking sanity, and you're attacking something called accuracy. But more importantly, what you're attacking is accountability. You're attacking accountability. You don't want these people to be accountable. Jews don't want to be accountable. They want to run away from it. So they will spend literally years trying to plant seeds. I dealt with this on a micro problem when somebody that I believe has Jewish roots. They spent a great deal amount of time planting evil, planting seeds, narratives, lies, big lies, which essentially stemmed into them being the victim. That's what Jews do. They become the victims. And this is why they create and stage these events, because then all of a sudden, oh, we're the victim. Look what they're doing to us. Let's get all the books off the internet. But I implore you guys to do your own research. The reason why I thought these were interesting is because nobody's going to spend this amount of energy trying to ban something that is false. Remember that. That is an absolute fact. You know how much energy goes into banning Christianity? Jesus Christ? You know how much Christianity goes into banning Buddhism, Sikhism, Muslims, Mormons, any of this false occultism, Satanism even, and Scientology? None. There is no opposition to it. But God forbid you have God in money, or God in the Pledge of Allegiance, or God in the Supreme Court, or God in government. You have a massive, massive rebellion by the demonic forces that don't want you to know any of these things. They don't want you to read these books. They want you to be brainwashed. They want the mainstream narrative to instill all of the understanding into your brain. And this is why I spend the amount and the energy and the time doing what I do to find the best, to find evidence for truth. So truth doesn't get buried. So history doesn't get rewritten. We must preserve history. And the books that Adolf Hitler was burning, and I want to say Adolf Hitler, but it was more the students of 1933. They got wise, and they stood up, and they started burning transgender books and socialism and communism books by Karl Marx. And they were burning psychology books that taught narrative. Even talking about my son this morning, where they, psychologists want to push, well, your son, your daughter, they should express themselves. They got a lot of emotions. Tell me how you feel. No, shut up. Nobody needs to know how a 6-year-old feels. I don't give a crap. His brain is wired that of 1 megabit. Wait for it to get to at least 1 gigabyte. And then I'm using all of these, hypothetical terms saying that his brain is not evolved. He does not know what he wants. He does not know. He hasn't even gone through puberty. A puberty is something that happens to the transformation of the body, where a boy realizes that he is sexually attracted to a girl and a girl realizes she's sexually attracted to a boy. They will not know that as a 5 or even a 10-year-old or even as a 12, potentially even a 13-year-old. So all this is nonsensical brainwash on how to disrupt and destroy the mind of the youth. They want to infiltrate the mind of the youth and destroy and to get them to ultimately rebel against the system. But at the end of the day, this is a way to pervert and deform the mind. Because if they can get you at the age of 6 or 7, indoctrination, they will ruin you. They will destroy you. They will pervert your mind, and essentially you won't ever be able to recoup from that. You won't be able to ever get out of that because of this Jewish mentality. And when I say Jews, I mean fake Jews. I find it funny because I posted something on TikTok this week, and I responded to somebody's comment, and I said, it's always Israel, better known as the fake Jews. And it was removed within a second. I get a pop-up instantly. As soon as I hit post, it pops up, content removed, violation of policy, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I can't say I'm too surprised. Their algorithm is designed to block anything that is anti-Israel, even though there is no context there. There is no context, but the fact that it says it's always Israel, even though it doesn't say Israel is stupid, I don't say they're retarded, better known as fake Jews doesn't actually imply anything. There's no content there. There's no relevance. But the reality of it is they don't want you to even talk about them. They want you to they want to hide in the background while they do what they do, while they pervert our youth, while they literally destroy our infrastructure and rob us for everything we have and create massive inflation where nothing is affordable and we have to depend on them with their stupid usury laws and their usury high interest rate loans where we can't afford to buy a car or a house or put our kids through college because of the Jews. By the way, the reason why our economy is where it's at, and they'll say, oh, it's booming, you should be grateful. No, it's not. You know what's booming? When a 20-year-old kid can afford to purchase a home, when even a 25 or 30-year-old can purchase to buy a home, you know who can afford to buy a home these days? On average, somebody in their 50s to 60s. That should disgust any one of you guys. And anybody that's buying a house at the age of 20, 30, or 40, they're getting into extreme debt and they're just 1 or 2 paychecks away from filing for bankruptcy. They're just 1 or 2 paychecks away from essentially losing their home. And that should scare all of you guys because that is disgusting. That should never be the case. So I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to work hard on making sure, first and foremost, that our freedom of speech is preserved. This is why Project VoiceBan was such a big initiative for me. But in order to get Project VoiceBan out there, I have to show people the urgency of why we need it first. I have to show people the urgency on why protecting our ability to speak is the most critical and most important thing on this planet. Clearly, when somebody goes and opposes that, which the Jews are notorious for this, and some may even say, well, Adolf Hitler did the same thing. Well, it wasn't really him. It was some of the students in Germany that didn't want the Jews pushing their propaganda out there. But let's be honest, here, the propaganda that they were pushing was coming from the Jews, and it was coming from perversion. They were trying to kill the Christian movement, which they are doing actively right now in Israel. They're trying to remove over 11,000, by the way, 11,000 churches and communities and societies and organizations out of Israel. So all this crap that they're telling us on TV and on social media that, oh, Israel is a friend of the Christian. No, you're not. You are the devil. You are of Satan. This is why Jesus called you the synagogues of Satan. You are fake Jews. You are not even the chosen. You don't come from the seed of Abraham. You do not come from the seed of Isaac or Jacob. You come from the pits of hell. You are the demons. You are the ones that are creating problems for our nations. You are the ones that are seeding division and chaos and intentionally doing the stuff that you guys did with all of these fake bomb attacks, where then you use this narrative to push your agenda to stop dissent and to stop freedom of speech. It disgusts me. It is vile. But I will continue discussing these books as I read them. I will keep sharing the names and titles. I will distribute this content because we live in America, an America of the free. And if you are not looking into this, and this is where it all starts from, this is the secret recipe. To give you guys, somebody may turn around and say, oh, well, why are you so obsessed with the Jews? Well, because the swamp and the deep state and all the disgusting, vile idolatry from Molech and Remphan, and more specifically Molech and Baal. And there's a star in Remphan that is actually mentioned in the New Testament in Acts 7. And said, ye took up the tabernacle of Molech and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them. He's talking to all of these fake idolatry religions. And this is basically Stephen. Stephen got killed by who? By the Pharisees. You know why he got killed? You guys know why he got killed? Because he opposed Israel. Because he called them Satan worshipers. He called the Pharisees and he said, you worship the tabernacle of Molech and the star of your god Remphan. And just like Stephen got killed for questioning the Jews and Israel, so did Charlie for questioning the Jews and Israel. History repeats itself. And that should make you guys literally tremble a little bit. Because exactly what Stephen did, and I've been quoting Stephen since the initial assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I said, this is a repeat of Stephen from the Bible, the first martyr for Christianhood. And the same thing happened to Charlie Kirk. He got killed because he started questioning their narratives. He started noticing that these are not God's chosen people. He's like, wait a minute, something doesn't smell right. And they knew it was just a matter of time before he started digging really, 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 really deep and got really, really opposed to their narrative and started blasting them everywhere for who they truly are. They can't silence everybody. They can't silence. And eventually Candace Owens got her hands on this ideology and realized it was all from Molech and from Remphan. And then all of a sudden, Tucker Carlson got the memo. And then some of the most hated people on the ADL that they love to quote, like Stu Peters. And then Dan Balzerian comes out and he's just attacking them. And he actually makes Charlie Kirk look like an amateur because he has over like 60 million followers, 30 of which are just on Instagram alone. And then if you go on his all the other posts, which I think he has Facebook, he has YouTube, he has Instagram, he has X. I mean, he's like 50, 60 million followers. And he has a lot more followers than Charlie Kirk. And he comes out and he starts calling them, you Baal worshipers. This should really scare them, and it does. And just like they killed Stephen back in the days for him confronting them for being Baal worshipers, to being basically Satan worshipers. It's the same thing as Stephen says, you guys worship Molech and Remphan. And in reality, all he's saying is you guys worship the Satan and you are the sons of Satan and you are the devil's children. The same thing that Christ told all of these Pharisees to their face, he is telling them as well. And this is crazy, but it's the truth. So thank you for tuning in. This is Veto Creed, God, Grit, and Glory. Stay tuned for more.